Hey photographers! I know that many of you anxiously awaited for Fujifilm to release the X-H2. Instead, they released the X-H2S. In this video, I'm comparing it to the X-H1, and I've also posted a preview of the X-H2S with my loves and hates. I'm using my X-H1 to record the first scene of this video. I've used the X-H1 for nearly all my videos since October 2018, and I'll switch over to show you video from the X-H2 in a minute. And I'll use the same XF 16 to 55mm lens on both. This footage is recorded at 4K, 30 frames, using H.264, the only codec available on the X-H1, data rate 200 megabits, ASTIA film sim. Manual focus. I don't find auto reliable enough, even with face detect. And Fujifilm Canada has loaned me this camera, along with some lenses for this review. This is a pre-production unit with the 1.0 firmware. Now, Fujifilm did not suggest this or any other topic, and did not review the script or the video before posting, although in the absence of a manual, they have been very helpful with my questions. Now, in this video, you'll see the X-H1 on the left, the X-H2S on the right. I'll refer to the X-H1 as the 1. The X-H2S is the 2S. And there are many similarities, and for the sake of time, I may skip over some of the things that are similar. They both use X-mount lenses and have X-trans sensors. The 1's third generation has 24.3 megapixels. The 2S has a fifth generation 26 megapixel stacked backside illuminated sensor. Both have ISO ranges up to 12,800, extended to 51,200. The base ISO on the one is 200, extends to 100. The H2's base is 160, extending down to 80. Physically, they are very similar. The 1 weighs 673 grams, the 2S 660 grams. And the 2S is the same depth, but it's a slight 5 millimeters shorter and 3 millimeters less wide. And the grain of the leathery finish on the 1 seems slightly more pronounced than the 2S. Both are weather sealed, from -10 to 40 degrees Celsius. The 1's obtrusive earlugs with a triangular ring for the strap have been replaced by the 2S's subtle and simpler strap mounts. That's a change for the better. And the differences are most pronounced on the top panel. The 1's left side dial sets ISO with a collar for drive mode settings, and then on the right side, shutter speed dial with a meter mode collar. The 2S has one dial, no collar, which sets the exposure mode. On-off is identical in operation, but not in labeling. On the 1, the diopter turns to adjust -4 to +2. The 2S's diopter must be pulled out to adjust, and then pushed back to lock into place. Its range is -5 to +3. The view mode key is the same. The LCD illumination key has moved from beside the screen on the 1 to the side of the viewfinder on the 2S. The 1's focal plane indicators on the left side of the viewfinder hump, on the 2S, the right side. The 1 has one top side key, exposure compensation. The 2S has 4, video record, ISO, white balanced, and an unlabeled custom function key. By default, it activates face detection. Front sides are nearly identical. However, the 1's focus mode selection has been replaced by a custom function key. By default, it sets focus mode. The focus illuminator has been moved. It's smaller and subtler on the 2S, and the 2S has the S label, top right. On the back, the left side's the same, but a drive label on the 2S indicates the delete key has a dual purpose. On the right, the AEL and joystick have exchanged places. The 2S's joystick is slightly larger and has a grippy textured surface. The change in the topside layout means the 2S's back dial is further to the right and more centered. I like that. The 1's awkward and often accidentally activated Q key has been moved under the AEL key on the 2S. Although the back thumb grip provides the same grip, it's not as wide on the 2S, where it's the home for the battery charge indicator. The 2S's display key has an adjacent label indicating its secondary use to activate Bluetooth. The right side card door is larger on the 2S, And while both have 2 slots, the one has 2 SD slots on the 2S, 1 SD and 1 CF Express Type B. The 2S also has some labeling and identification inside the port door. And incidentally, the 1 powers off when a card is removed or inserted. 2S does not. On the bottom, both have ports for accessory grips. The 1 has more contact points. The 2S has a USB-C type connector. The 1 has 5 screws around the tripod socket. 2S has 2. The 1 speaker's on the bottom. On the 2S, it's on the left side under the headphone cover. On the 1, the battery compartment operates horizontally, and it uses the NPW126S type battery rated for 310 images. The 2S's larger compartment opens vertically for the NPW235 battery rated for 630 images. The 1 has 1 left side cover with a 3.5mm mic input, a USB micro B connector, micro HDMI, and 2.5mm remote. An included cable protector mounts between the USB and HDMI. The 2S has 4 covers which pry open. As someone who's damaged multiple micro HDMI cables, I appreciate the full-sized HDMI port, but not its flimsy attachment. Why not a hinge like the others? Incidentally, the inside of the door reveals the country of manufacture, China. The other 3, 3.5mm mic, headphone, and USB-C are hinged. The cable protector mounts beside the USB-C port over the cover. The 2S also has a 2.5mm remote connector. It's on the right side above the card door. On the 1, the viewfinder's resolution is 3.69 m-dots. The 2S is 5.76 m-dots. The 1's refreshes at 60 or 100 with boost on. The 2S is 120 frames. The 1's 1 m-dot touch LCD rotates up and down and swivels out for low-angle portrait shooting. The model and serial number and country of manufacture is on the back of the LCD. The 1.62 m-dot touch LCD on the 2S flips out with a 270-degree swivel. Inside, there's a cover and 2 screw holes for the optional mounting fan. On the 1, the shutter release is a soft touch. In video mode, I often start recording accidentally. The mechanical shutter sound is very discreet. The release on the 2S is slightly firmer, and it has a more distinct sound. For the rest of this video, you'll see me on the X-H2S. Still 4K 30 frames, but now recorded with the 10-bit ProRes codec using the 422 profile Astia Film Sim. This time, autofocus, as I'm finding the 2S very reliable. Well, let's go into the menus. Again, 1 on the left, 2S on the right, and skipping over things that are the same. And note that I have reset both to their defaults, and we're starting with the cameras in the stills mode. The overall look, design, and operation of the menu is the same. The 1 has 7 sections, including my menu. On the 2S, a network section has been added for 8. On the Image Quality tab, both have 3 aspects and 3 sizes, but the pixel dimension, bottom left, reflects the 2S's 26-megapixel resolution. On the 2S, RAW recordings have a fully compressed option. The 2S has a JPEG or high-efficiency image format selection. The high-efficiency saves higher quality, 10-bit 422 color sampled, image files with smaller file sizes than JPEG. In addition to a colored menu, the film simulation selector on the 2S provides more information to help with your selection. In addition to those available on the 1, the 2S has the classic negative, nostalgic negative, and Eterna bleach bypass simulations. When a black and white sim is selected, the 2S has a monochrome color setting. On the 2S, grain effect also has a size setting. And the 2S has color chrome and color chrome effects blue options. White balance has been moved ahead of dynamic range on the 2S, with several additional options: auto white priority and auto ambience priority. Selecting a custom white balance on the 2S is done with a screen where the selection area can be sized and positioned. With Kelvin settings, the 2S is more granular and can be set in 100-unit increments. The range 2500 to 10,000 is the same. On the 1, dynamic range of 200 requires ISO 400, dynamic range 400 requires ISO 800. On the 2S, slightly lower ISOs, 320 and 640. The 1's highlight and shadow tones have been combined in the 2S as tone curve. Settings are the same, but the interactive settings screen with the curve display are useful updates. The 1 has noise reduction. On the 2S, high ISO noise reduction. The 2S adds a clarity setting with an interactive screen. On the 1, custom settings are selected here. On the 2S, they're selected using the top dial. Note that on the 2, there are icons to indicate which mode this option belongs to, which appear for stills and video modes. When editing, on the 1, there are less than 2 screens of options. The 2S has nearly a full set of options. Note that on this screen that the selection has its own version of the menu, although many options, particularly setup, are dimmed out. Settings on the 2S can be copied from one custom set to another and can be named. On the 2S, there's an option to update the setting while you're using it, and any of the settings can be assigned as stills or video. The 1's mount adapter setting is on the shooting setting menu, page 1. It's here on the 2S. Before we move on to the next tab, this seems like a good time to note that the 1 resets to the first tab and the first selection pretty much every time the menu is opened. Kind of major aggravation. The 2S returns to the previous setting most of the time, even when I'm several layers deep into the setup screens. And one more thing. Fujifilm continues to dim out unavailable selections with no indication of what's needed to activate them. For instance, it took me some time to figure out what dimmed the flickerless shutter speed setting. On the Focus tab, the 2S includes the focus mode selector here in place of the 1's physical selector. It's also the default option for the front side key that replaces the selector. The 1 has 91 or 325 focus points, the 2S 117 and 425. Although face eye detection has the same options, they're needlessly nested on the 2S. The 2S adds a subject detection selector, again nested, with 6 options. The 1 has 3 manual focus assists. The 2S adds off but loses standard, the expanded view, sometimes called punch-in, but adds a digital microprism option. Now, I should note that the focus check option automatically punches in when the focus ring is adjusted in manual focus mode, so while it's not on the previous menu, that's still an available assist. The 2S has an autofocus range limiting option. The shooting settings have the most dramatic changes and additions. The 1, which has a drive caller, uses the menu to set the options for some of the drive settings, selecting and setting brackets, high and low burst, and the advanced filters. On the 1, first select the bracket, then configure the settings. On the 2S, some are set on the drive mode menu, accessed from the drive mode key. That covers burst settings, ISO, and white balance. Others, like auto exposure, film simulation, and focus, are selected here, with the options configured on menu screen 2. For continuous shooting, the 1's drive caller has 3 positions, low, medium, and high. Medium is fixed at 6 per second. In the menu, low sets from 3 to 5 images per second. High is 8. Attach the X-H1's optional battery grip and turn on boost for 11 frames, and switch to the electronic shutter for 11 and 14. The 2S's low setting offers 3 to 8 frames, high is 10 and 15 with the mechanical shutter. Switch to electronic for 20, 30, and 40. Electronic also provides a crop burst mode, the same rates with a 1.25 crop, forcing a resolution switch to medium. The 2S also has drive options for HDR with 5 settings, and panorama is a drive caller option on the 1, a drive menu option on the 2S. When the 2S's mode dial is set to filter, the same options appear as the 1, but here the screen is interactive, showing a preview of the effect. The 2S has the Sports Finder, only available with the mechanical shutter, which reduces image size to medium but shows the area outside the image. And Pre-Shot, which requires the electronic shutter and burst active before it can be set. Pre-Shot buffers when the shutter is soft pressed and then saves several images from just before the shutter's fully pressed. Not sure why their shutter setting isn't adjacent to these two. And both have 2 and 10-second timers, and if you want to take multiple timer images, combine this setting with a burst mode. The 1 turns off self-timer mode when the camera is turned off. The 2S has a setting to save timer mode even when the camera is turned off. And there's also an option to disable the self-timer lamp. Interval settings are the same. The 2S adds an exposure smoothing option. The 1 has a caller to select the meter or photometry setting. The 2S sets in the menu. Neither has a highlight mode. Both override photometry when Face Eye Detect is on. The 1's flicker reduction isn't available when an external monitor is connected. It's either on or off. On the 2S, it's available and it's configured only for the first and applied to all, or individually for all frames in a burst. ISO and stabilization are switched on the 2S. On the 1, ISO is set using the dial. The range is 200 to 12,800. The L setting is selected using a setup button dial setting where 100, 125, and 160 can be set. Similarly, the H position can be assigned to 25.6 and 51.2. On the 2S, a dedicated ISO key on the top opens the entire range. The extended low 80, 100, and 125, then 160 to 12,800, and the same extended high settings. Both have the same 3 auto ISO options with the slight range differences I just mentioned. Using the 1's button dial settings, switching the dial to Command enables the front dial to select all ISO settings. The 2S has a number of settings to manage the optional cooling fan. The menu isn't dimmed when the fan isn't connected, but don't let that fool you. There is no internal fan. On the Movie tab, the 1 displays the full movie menu. In Stills mode on the 2, a simplified set of options is available. When the mode dial is set to video mode, a video-centric menu is displayed with movie options on the top tab. The 1 settings all record using the H.264 codec, supporting 4K in both 16 or 17:9, frame rates 24 to 30, data rates up to 200 megabits per second. HD to 60 with a max 100 megabit data rate. Movie modes on the 2S range from 6K at 3:2 aspect, 24 to 30 frames, 4K and HD 16 and 17:9 at 24 to 60 frames. On the 1, high speed, available for HD, ranges from 2 to 5 times slow, frame rates up to 120. The 2S has a more extensive menu, supporting both 4K up to 120 frames for up to 5 times slow, HD up to 240 for 10 times, and there are separate settings for the HDMI output. The 1 has independent settings for video with a range of image settings. On the 2S, the entire menu is independent between video and stills. The 1 has F-Log with a simple on-off switch that forces the minimum ISO to 800. The 2S offers F-Log 1 and 2 as well as hybrid log gamma. F-Log1's minimum ISO is 640, F-Log2 1250, HLG 1000. On the one, 4K and HD output to HDMI are set using separate options. The 2S's movie setting list provides extensive recording output controls for both cards and HDMI. In fact, across the board for video settings, the 2S offers so much more that comparison isn't really possible. For the full details, I'll post a full video settings review. However, the One's audio panel is identical to the 2S but with two new features: a mic input selection for mic or line input from a console, and support for an optional Tascam XLR mic bridge powered by the flash shoe that enables 4-channel recording. On the Setup tab, the 2S has a global time area selection screen. The 2S has independent My Menu settings for stills and video modes. On both, My Menu's support for setup menu options is limited to a few screen settings. On the 2S, a battery age display, which also includes the batteries in the grip. And the 2S provides more reset options. And 4 regulatory screens: US, Canada, Japan, and India. The 2S adds a second sound to the mechanical shutter. The mechanical shutter sound can't really be turned off. Both have controls for the electronic shutter to select the sound and set the volume. The 2S also has control for playback with the optional XLR adapter. The 2S has a menu control for view mode that's in addition to the key beside the viewfinder. On the 2S, Viewfinder Brightness Auto has a brightness adjustment. The 2S also has an F-Log View Assist, which applies a lot to the display so it doesn't look washed out. The One has a simple 2D electronic level. The 2S adds a 3D level option. On display custom settings, the electronic level has been removed on the 2S and adds the icon for the cooling fan and guidance messages. The 2S has a contrast adjustment, which includes a dark ambient lighting setting. And there's an option to display the location info icon if that feature is on. The 2S can also make the Q screen background transparent with independent stills and video options. The joystick or focus lever options are different. On the One, there are options to disable it. The 2S has useful settings for both when it's pushed or tilted. On the One, the Q menu has 12 selections. The 2S can be set from 4 to 16 and independently for stills and video. On the One, there are 6 function keys, 4 swipe options for the LCD, and 3 keys that can be reassigned. There are 6 pages of available functions. The 2S starts with 3 reassignable keys, 7 function keys, 4 swipes, and 4 more reassignables. There are 10 pages of functions, including an eye focus toggle and cooling fan settings. The 2S sets the keys on power zoom lenses. And the assignments for the command dials are different, mainly because of PASM. And on the 2S, the direction of control for the front and rear dials can be changed. The One has settings for the high, low, and auto ISO positions. On the 2S, lens options have their own subscreen, with more options to control the speed of adjustments with the focus and zoom rings, as well as settings for power zoom lenses. The One's exposure compensation key can be set to toggle or press. On the 2S, it's the auto white balance lock modes with that option. The 2S has options for the ISO key. On the One, aperture control can be assigned to a command key when the lens is in the A position, and the 2S has several more options for the touchscreen. Power management on the 2S adds an eco mode, controls for the boost setting, and a power off temp setting, which slows down the overheat warning when set to high. The one's Save Original Image setting applies to the flash red-eye removal setting. The one's connection settings are a subset of the setup screen. The two devotes an entire menu section to network and connections. All of the one's features are available on the 2S, but I'm going to leave the additional detail until the network grip is available and I can review all of the capabilities. In Playback on the 2S, RAW conversion can save high efficiency and TIFF files, supports several image quality options, monocolor, color chrome blue, and highlight and shadow are combined as tone, noise reduction is relabeled, clarity and HDR mode are added. The 2S's Playback menu can convert high efficiency to JPEG and TIFF. Only the one has red-eye in Playback. 2S has a separate transfer to phone setting, but that's a feature also available on the one. The one includes the EFX8 flash unit. The one included a battery charger with a detachable power cable. The 2S recharges using the USB-C port. USB-C cable and power adapter are included. The battery grip for the one added functionality and a headphone port. The one's grip had its own charging cable. The batteries in the grip on the 2S are charged from the camera's USB-C port. And the 2S has an optional network connectivity grip. Hope to get hold of one of those soon for review. And there's an optional XLR bridge available from Tascam that's powered and connects via the flash shoe. I haven't seen that one yet either. Now, I hope that is everything. But if there are things that I've overlooked or missed, please do add your note to the comments. And while Fujifilm Canada has been very kind and gracious by lending me cameras and lenses for this and other reviews, they have not paid me, told me what to say, or reviewed anything before I posted this video. My sponsors are those of you who've decided to support this channel by becoming members. Thanks to you, there are no ads, neither ones that I read or YouTube interruptions. And I'm very thankful to my members. However, I don't post any content exclusively for members, and I do reply to all relevant questions and civil comments. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.